Hi, this is Dreams of Jeannie. I just got halfway through a video and accidentally turned it off, so I'm starting again because I don't know how to put them together. Anyway, I'm having a hard time tonight getting this done. I was in my closet earlier going through some t-shirts and came across a couple of shirts I haven't seen in a long time. So I have props for this video. I have a shirt that says Project Metashare, and on the back it says Haiti Earthquake Relief Team. And then I have another one that says Haiti Clinic. And I volunteered in Haiti on medical mission trips after the 2010 earthquake for several times over the course of maybe 3 or 4 years. But I went down a month or maybe 5 weeks after the 2010 earthquake. I was able to find a group to go down and volunteer with because when I remember watching all that. That happened in 2010. And the intensity of this, the damage and the injuries and the despair and the help that they needed just touched my heart. I remember watching TV and just in tears, thinking, what can I do? How can I help? And so I found an organization to volunteer with. And about 5 weeks after the earthquake, I flew to Miami by myself, which didn't scare me, hooked up with a bunch of people I didn't know, flew to a country I'd never been to, landed late at night in an airport where the runway was bumpy from earthquake, like buckled pavement, and there were not consistent electrical lights to land by, into this war-torn, actually really war-torn, earthquake-torn country that I'd never even thought about going to before. And I was there for a week, and it was the most intense, scary, overwhelming, memorable, meaningful, in some ways exciting, terrifying experience of my life. So many adjectives to describe what that week was like. It was a field hospital similar to what you might have seen on the TV show MASH, only it was more primitive than that. It was a tent hospital set up on the runway at Port-au-Prince Airport, which was out of commission. Mostly, there was one end of it they were using for flights to come in and out. And it was 3 big circus tents and then some smaller tents. And one tent was the main hospital where I worked 12-hour shifts for 7 days. And then one tent was where the volunteers slept, and they had a big hose that piped in some air conditioning with a generator that worked sometimes. And there was, I think, another tent that had the operating room and the pediatric section. And then there were smaller tents that had like the emergency room and logistics and things like that. But it was basically a and we had porta potties. That's a whole other thing. I'd been in porta potties, like at football games or something. These are not like any other porta potties you've ever seen. There was a whole row of them along one fence. And you had to walk out to them. And you went inside, and it was blazing hot. It was 100 degrees at least every day. And usually you went with somebody because you either left your ID with them. You wore your passport and all your ID and all your valuables around your neck at all times in a bag or whatever you had on. When you went in the porta potty, you were terrified. It would fall down into the porta potty and you would have to retrieve it. But you had to have it. It had your passport, your identification, your ticket home. And then the showers were just down from the porta potties, and they were just like stand-up showers, like open to the air, and they had like a wooden door, and there was a sign that said, and it was just like a garden hose coming down on you with ice cold water, which felt really good at the end of the day. And you were then showering under the stars. And it was so primitive and so unworldly and unreal. You came home and you couldn't even fathom that you had been there. And we had guards. It was guarded all the time, and there were guards that were carrying big, long rifles patrolling all hours of the night around the perimeter of our camp, which was scary in itself. We had all different people, UN members from all different countries were down there. But you drive through the city, and there were UN trucks driving around everywhere amongst the ruins of the earthquake-damaged buildings. It was unbelievably scary, stressful, terrifying, memorable, meaningful, and sometimes joyful. experiences I've ever had in my life. You met people that were friends for life, even though I've never seen them again. I did have one friend that I actually saw a couple times. She lives in Texas by my sister. I made friends with the Haitians. They were the warmest, loveliest people who loved their families, just wanted to take care of their families. Most of them were living on the street. I had at least one person ask me if I could give them a tent. They all thought Americans were rich. Now it's a situation where if you go down there and you have any shade of Caucasian to your skin, they're going to kidnap you for money. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible place to live now. I really worry about some of my friends if they're even still alive down there, because it's just deteriorated every year. It's just gotten worse, and it just makes me so sad. But in that moment, people stepped up and met the need. Makes me sad that our world can't be like that now. But since I found these things and I had props in the closet, I thought I would talk about my experience. I typed emails home every night. I had a BlackBerry then, and I would type with my thumbs on my BlackBerry, long emails, descriptive emails to my husband every night. And he would email them to friends and family to let them know I was still alive. It was very spotty cell and Wi-Fi coverage there, so it might not even get to him till the next day. I have emails from every one of those days, and subsequent mission trips I have emails from. And my mother told me one time I should put those all in a book, and I printed out most of those emails because that email would be long gone otherwise. And I have them all just kind of stuck in an album. I have tons of pictures. We did have a chance to go drive around the city one of the days we were there, because there was an overlap of staff one day when new people came in, and we kind of had a bunch of people for a couple days. So we got to go take a tour of the city, and it was just so sad and so surreal. It was a war zone. It was an absolute war zone. There were buildings collapsed. You might remember seeing pictures on the news of the presidential palace. It was all collapsed into itself, and we went by that, and we saw there was a church that had collapsed when people were there, and people died. You'd see buildings and homes and businesses just collapsed everywhere, and there were people there still there because they couldn't retrieve all of them. It was just the most insane situation I've ever been in my life. And I would do it again in a heartbeat if the need arose. So I'm not sure why I'm even telling you about all this. It's just I ran across my props, and it made me start reliving those experiences. And even thinking about it just almost gives me chills, because I came home and I had to decompress. It was so intense. You lived in it so intensely. The injuries were so terrible, and people were sick. Just, people who live in poverty are not healthy. So you were dealing with, just at that point, long-term injuries. There were so many amputations and wounds that didn't heal. So you had a lot of wound care needs there, and medical issues that were untreated in people who lived in poverty. And just really, really a remarkable experience on so many levels. And that's why I thought I would just talk about it and make a video about that. And maybe sometime I'll do something with all those emails. I have them all printed out, and I have tons of pictures. Tons and tons of pictures. I have some of them in albums, and I know I've still got more to put in albums. But that was my most intense and my first medical mission trip experience. It was the first time I'd done anything like that. I just remember feeling so intensely that I had to go help. They needed my help. And I came home forever changed. Forever changed. I will never be that same person who had not been down there yet. And life goes on, it kind of gets that effect, gets subdued some, but I will never forget being down there, filling a need when it needed to be filled, and the intensity of the experience, the people I met, the people we helped, the people we couldn't help, and the situation all those people lived in, because I got to come home, and those people were stuck living in that. So it made me come home and be grateful for my life every day, every single day. I was grateful for, and I still am. Like I said, the effect is a little subdued now. It's been 15 years since I went down there. But when I start talking about it, just as I'm talking about it, I start to feel like a little shaky, and that feeling of intensity comes over me all over again. So if you happen to see this, thank you for letting me share it with you. And, hard things happen to people in other parts of the world sometimes. And when you step up to make a difference, it is an extraordinary feeling. Even if the difference you made isn't long lasting, it made a difference to those people in those days when we were there, and that was what I held on to at the end of the day, was that. And then I came home to my family and to my safe world, and they didn't. They were stuck in the midst of that, and I think about them all a lot. So on that note, that's the end of my Haiti story.